So we are looking at the circulatory system of a shark, and this is more detailed than you need to know. However, this is available for those who are doing higher level education and need to know some of the detailed portions of the circulatory system. So here we go. We're going to start off with the ventral aorta. So here is this tube that kind of runs in this area. And the ventral aorta starts not here, but right after it. So you can kind of see this clear tube that I'm pinching with my tweezers right here. This is the ventral aorta. And that ventral aorta is fed blood from the atrium and ventricles. And so if we look back here at the heart itself, the darker regions right here are going to be the atriums. And just so you know, aorta actually means great artery. So you notice it's really big. We're going to see that a little bit later on in the dorsal aorta. But atri means vestibule or chamber. So this is the chamber that's going to take blood and send it here to the ventricle. So the ventricle means belly. The ventricle is then going to pump blood out of the ventricle through what this is called the conus arteriosus, and then out the ventral aorta. The blood supply to the heart is by this pink structure right here, and this right here is the coronary artery. All right. So what happens is the blood goes from the atriums to the ventricle to the conus arteriosus, to the ventral aorta, and then it goes out the side here with these tubes. You can see one of them right here. Here's another tube. It's kind of falling apart down here. These are known as the afferent brachial arteries, and they're going to send the blood to the gills in order to get oxygen. All right, so we go to the gills. Let's see what that looks like. The gills are right here. We pulled them open. These are the filaments where the carbon dioxide and oxygen gas are going to exchange. And you have the pre-traumatic artery here, and you have the post-traumatic artery on this side. The blood is going to travel from this area right here to the efferent brachial arteries, and so it's going to travel down to the middle portion of the shark. As I pull this back, we can see those efferent. Efferent means to carry away, and that's these, all of these right here are actually the efferent brachial arteries. And it's going to travel down to this artery right here, or this large, great artery called the dorsal aorta. This is the dorsal aorta, and it's going to supply blood to the rest of the body. So let's see some of those things in the dorsal aorta that the dorsal aorta supplies blood to. One of those things that gets blood is going to be the liver, which is this large gray structure here. And if we look at it right here, we have the hepatic artery and vein. So the veins are colored in yellow for us. This is the hepatic portal vein, and this is the hepatic artery that's running right next to it. Going back down to the dorsal aorta, we're going to see this first branch right here. And this first branch, hepatic, just so you know, means liver. But this first branch is the celiac artery. So we can see it right here off of the dorsal aorta after the efferent brachial arteries. But as we flip it around, it actually comes right back up here. And celiac means abdominal. And so this is going to the abdominal region. And it's going to supply blood here to this area. All right, let's go ahead and continue further down. We're going to move the uterus out of the way here. Let's move it on this side. As we go down the dorsal aorta, we come to this first branch right here, past the celiac, and this branch right here is the anterior mesenteric artery. And this is going to lead to this artery right here, which is the posterior intestinal artery. Mes means middle, so this is to the middle of the abdomen region of the ileum. Remember, this is the ileum there. All right, the next one, as you see, it divides first, and then it goes again here. And the second one is called the Lien gastric artery, where Lien means spleen. And so you're going to notice that it goes to the spleen here, and it's going to be a blood supply to that area. The next one is, we travel down the dorsal aorta, is right here. And this one right here is known as the posterior mesenteric artery, and it leads to the rectal gland. So we're getting, remember, this regulates salt. If we continue down, the dorsal aorta is going to go all the way down here. You can see it kind of break apart here. I know there's lots of pink here, so what I did was I cut this open again. And if we're looking at the tip of this, this is the dorsal side. We have spinal cord, vertebral column. This first one is the caudal artery, and this bottom one is the caudal vein. So I always have the artery over the vein, and the dorsal aorta splits to make the caudal artery there. or it gets a lot narrower in its makeup. Okay, so let's look at the posterior intestinal artery and vein. We said that this transitioned from the anterior mesenteric into the posterior and intestinal vein and artery. So this one is the posterior intestinal artery, and then you have the posterior intestinal vein that also runs right next to it. The lienogastric vein leads from the posterior intestinal vein right here. So remember again, lien means spleen, and gastric actually means stomach. So it's going to leave here, and it's, this is the vein right here called the lienogastric vein, coming from the ileum to the spleen region. We have the gastric artery. So if we go back up to the stomach, remember we said celiac meant abdominal region, and if we look on the stomach itself right here, this is the pyloric section. This right here is going to be your gastric artery in this region. And then as we wrap things up here, we can see on the side of the fish, this darker region, and this darker region right here is called the lateral abdominal vein. The lateral abdominal vein. Let's see. If there's any other ones we're going to talk about real quick. Oh, okay, that's it.